Okay. All right, so we're just over time. Hopefully the message that we had on the screen there was helpful for those that are current members of Bangor. Just a bit of a reminder there around CPD and updating your activity logs. But it's absolutely wonderful to have you here. For those that have not seen me before, my name's Stefan Plank and I'm the director for Bangor. And it's a pleasure to have you here on this lunchtime today. And just want to say thank you and a huge well done for taking the time out. We feel we've got a really valuable event to share with you today and some wonderful speakers too to talk you through today's area of focus and the content we've got for the event. And I'll introduce those in just a second. But for those that have just arrived, if you want to just pop your name into the chat, maybe say where you're phoning in from, dialing in from, or zooming in from, and maybe a bit about yourself, you're free to do that. In the meantime, we'll be here for an hour, just under an hour. And as we move through the session today, we would absolutely encourage any questions or observations or thoughts that might arise for you within this session that could help to facilitate a discussion as we move towards the end of the presentation by Bridgette and Sophie. So yeah, thanks everybody for being here. So before we get started and I hand over to Bridgette, I just want to do an introduction for both of them. And maybe Sophie and Bridgette, you could give us a bit of a wave would be helpful so that people can identify who you are. Thank you so much. That's great. So Sophie to begin with. Hi, Sophie. Sophie is the co-director of the Centre for Mindfulness Research and Practice at Bangor University, where she teaches on the master's programme. And Sophie also sits on the international panel of acknowledgement, the IPA. Some people on the screen might know that better, the IPA, the International Panel of Acknowledgement. And this is for European Association of Mindfulness-Based Approaches. It's a place where new programs are assessed and recognised and then listed, new mindfulness-based programs. But also really importantly, bringing a big smile to my face is Sophie is also the current chair of Bangor, the trustee chair for our charity. So thank you for being here, Sophie, and thank you for your time today. And secondly, Bridgette. So hi, Bridgette. A bit of a wave there from Bridgette. Hello. Just to familiarise yourself with Bridgette today. Bridgette is a senior lecturer with the Centre for Mindfulness Research and Practice, again at Bangor University. So we're really blessed to have both of these people here today to speak to us. And Bridgette is a co-author of the journal article, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction for Our Time. Okay, mindfulness-based stress reduction for our time. I'll pop the title of that paper in the chat in case anybody wants to look that up after the session today and maybe take a look at some of that research. But mindfulness-based stress reduction for our time, a curriculum that is up to the task is the subtitle, the subheading of that. And particularly Bridgette is motivated to understand what kind of mindfulness and compassion practice are needed to support us with the challenges of today. So with no further delay, I'm going to hand over to Bridgette and to Sophie, but Bridgette initially, who's going to hold the space for us to begin with a practice. Thank you so much, Bridgette.
Thank you, Steph. And yeah, really lovely to be here. Lovely to see people that I know and others that are, it's the first time I'm meeting you. Yeah, really lovely to be here. So yeah, let's give ourselves a chance to arrive by doing a practice together. So I'll guide and as always, feel welcome to do what feels most supportive for you in this process of arriving. So to be guided by me or at any point to allow that guidance to move more into the background. So yeah, simply pausing from whatever we've been doing, whatever we've been engaged in. I'm beginning to draw the attention inwards. You may wish to close the eyes or simply lower the eye gaze, let those rest. And sensing the feel of the body in this position that it's in. Perhaps adjusting your posture a little bit to find a position that's both comfortable and also that offers a sense of being present, being awake. And allowing your interest to rest, the feel of the body, the sensations of contact down in the feet, connection with the floor. Sensations of contact with the chair. Feel of gravity acting on the body and maybe sensing the support, the chair, the floor, the earth coming back up. And noticing the height of the body. Place where the hands are resting. An overall sense of the body right now in this position, including the feel of the breath moving within the body. We can also notice the kind of internal weather that we're arriving with, maybe quality of thoughts and thinking, certain quality of mood. And how is it to meet however we are with a friendly acknowledgement? Now, noticing if there's a place in the body where it's pretty straightforward to rest your attention, to gather and settle your attention up, where sensations are either fairly neutral or maybe even subtly pleasant. So this could be sensations down in the feet, perhaps sensations of contact with the seat. Sensations in the hands. Or perhaps the feel of the breath moving in a certain place in the body. So choosing and settling, allowing your attention to rest with the feel of sensations in this place that you're choosing. And of course, our attention will get drawn to other experiences, thoughts, sensations elsewhere. So we can recognize this, knowing, oh yeah, this is how it is to be human. And also knowing we can simply reconnect if we choose with the feel of sensations in this place in the body that can act like a kind of anchor place. And now beginning to spread the awareness out. So still in connection with these sensations, but spreading out now into sense of the whole body. sensations from the surface of the body and from within. Whole body in this position. Beginning to broaden, to also expand into sensing the space around you. So beyond the surface of the body, to include the feel of the air around you. Maybe sounds. And in your own time, if eyes have been closed, beginning to open them, including what you can see where you are. And also in your own time, opening to, oh yeah, and here we are. Having a sense of how is it maybe to hold some awareness of internal, particular sensations of anchor place, and also, yeah, external. Here we are together. So thank you, and yeah, welcome once again. So I'm going to share a few slides and speak about our intentions for the session. As Steph was saying, if questions arise as we go along, please pop them in the chat, and we'll have some time at the end to explore those. So I'm going to begin by sharing my screen and speaking about our intentions for the time we have. So yeah, our intention is to explore, first of all, myself, a kind of broad framework of social and systemic awareness and the place of mindfulness within that. Maybe very familiar to you, maybe somewhat newer. And I'll say a little bit about what we know from research around social and systemic awareness and mindfulness within that. And then Sophie will talk about a particular program that we've developed and some of the understandings that underpin that. And that will include some opportunity to explore a practice and then to engage in questions and dialogue together. So that's our plan. And so here we are. This image here pointing to this, it's a framework that can help us really understand different levels of influence on our experience that we'll all be familiar with to some degree, and I'll speak a little bit about it. So just to locate it, it's influenced by Bronfenbrenner and our ecological systems approach. So in this, at this micro level, really what this is suggesting is that we're all born into a particular body, particular biology, and into a particular family. And that those aspects influence our experience. And also that we also influence those systems. So what we take into our body, for example, through nutrition has an impact on our biology, and how we are within our family has an impact on those family relationships, just as our biology and the experience of our family has an influence on us. So that's a kind of micro level of influence. And then we also exist within communities and groups, so this meso level. So we'll be parts of friendship groups that have a broader influence on us, workplaces, local neighborhoods. And again, these influence us. So for example, in a workplace, whether there's a culture of taking a lunch break and having, taking lunch, that will have an impact on our biology actually, and on our whole system, and sense of work-life balance. And at the same time, we also, how we behave, how we are, we can influence those systems that we exist within, those communities. And then this macro level are the broader societal and global factors that impact us. So, for example, what's happening politically, what's happening economically, also what's happening with the natural world. All of these have an influence on us. So, and as we'll see, we also have an influence within all of this. So the within this system is that we exist within these contexts, and there's a dynamic interplay, a dynamic flow. We are kind of interconnected, interdependent. So to come to this quote from Rhonda McGee, we live in systems and systems live within us. And not only do systems impact on the opportunities we have, the access to resources, but also we're shaped by the beliefs and the views and the practices within each of these levels. Yeah, that's the overall kind of framework. And actually, the mindfulness has always from the beginning actually included this broad view. And yeah, as you can see, this is situated in the planet Earth and also within this broader solar system and galaxy. So, really we live within these vast systems and these really up close systems, all in a dynamic interplay. So yeah, just to speak to where we can see that mindfulness has always included this big view. So one of the original core kinds of teachings from the historical Buddha that describes how we can establish mindfulness, the Satipatthana Sutta, describes these 4 ways of establishing mindfulness. And there's this phrase repeated 21 times throughout these teachings, which talks about both internally and externally. So always from the very beginning, mindfulness of what's happening internally and also mindfulness externally, our contexts and our environments and our relationships. And if we come to more recent understandings, it's absolutely present as well within neuroscience. So there's a quote from Dan Siegel that the human mind, our kind of consciousness, is an embodied relational process that regulates the flow of energy and information. So this is how we are. This is what shapes our experience. We're embodied, we're relational, and we exist within these different contexts. So there from the beginning with mindfulness. And if we stop to kind of think about how mindfulness-based programs have developed in kind of the West and in contemporary times, we could say that actually there's been a focus at that micro individual level, and that's really understandable. The context within which mindfulness-based programs have developed, such as healthcare, to get established, the focus has been on individual outcomes of well-being. And many of our conceptualizations around what causes us struggle and what supports our well-being have focused on a kind of individual level of stress physiology, of cognitive processes. So, we live in systems and systems live within us. MBPs have developed within certain contexts and so have been shaped by those contexts. And there has been a developing awareness in recent years of that. And the Centre for Mindfulness Research and Practice, we're very much engaged in considering, along with many others, we're aware of this being a shift actually in the field of how can mindfulness support us to understand the impacts of systems on us, how we are conditioned, how we have these assumptions that we're not aware of, that really have been taken in from our broader environments, from kind of historical legacies of kind of systems of actually injustice and oppression. So how can we understand, how can mindfulness support us to begin to notice that? and how can we influence and establish systems for individual and collective well-being. So there is a broadening out, and this is a kind of, I'd say, you could say a frontier question in the mindfulness world. So just wanting to speak to a couple of recent papers. Steph mentioned this one, mindfulness-based stress reduction for our time. This offers a view of how an established MBP can be offered in a way that has social and systemic awareness and can be tailored to your particular context and attuned to the particular cultures, particular populations and communities you're working with. And as I say, there has been the shift in the field to this interest in social and systemic awareness. And this other paper by Rob Callan-Davis here is a scoping review to look at what is happening that is bringing an interest to, you could say, bigger than self issues, and how is the evidence developing. So I know Rob's in process with the outcomes of that scoping review. So that'll be able to help when it comes out, really summarising what's happening and what's the evidence. So a little summary, why systems matter. We live and work within complex systems, which have this dynamic interplay. They impact on us through narratives, beliefs, assumptions, shape our behaviours and beliefs. And that mindfulness can enable us to begin to see, to be systems aware, if you like, and move from an individual focus to actually considering collective well-being. And we can never step outside of systems. We can have a commitment to begin to notice and be aware, but we're not separate from the systems that we seek to change. So a little bit, just really briefly, about what the research says. As I say, Rob Callan-Davis, his paper, when it comes out, will give an overall summary. But fairly briefly, this is a mix of individual studies and then systematic reviews, which is important as we build an evidence base. Individual studies really show promise, but those systematic reviews, gathering up a number of studies, really build the evidence base more strongly. So what we know, the Luberto and the Euler studies, the systematic reviews, is that practicing mindfulness enhances compassion, altruism, and empathy. So these are capacities that are likely to support both pro-social and pro-environmental behaviours. Also reduces intergroup bias, this tendency we have to kind of prefer the groupings that we are, or favour the groupings that we are members of. So practicing mindfulness actually reduces that, which can only be good news. And that practicing mindfulness is associated, this is a single study here, so promising, associated with sustainable consumer behaviour and ecological concern. So that level of research is looking at the impact on the individual. And within a systems approach, if you change one thing, then it impacts the whole system. So the view is that if on an individual level, our inner capacities shift, then actually that has an impact on the whole system. So the next slide is considering more at a systems level. So the REB study was looking at, it's an individual study, supervisors who, and levels of mindfulness in supervisors, and then speaking to employees about their experience of the workplace. And what they found was that with supervisors with a greater level of mindfulness, that actually there were organizational cultures of care, inclusion, and sustainability. So that idea that, you know, if one part has more mindfulness, then it can impact the whole system. And then integrative review is good and out, which is looking at that was mapping all that was happening in the workplace around mindfulness. You might well be familiar with that if you looked at the workplace evidence. And the kind of broad headline is that practicing mindfulness within the workplace cultivates psychological flexibility and ethical sensitivity in the workplace. And then a particular, I think, powerful one for me is this work of Rachel Lilly, and that's been continued on by Diana Reynolds. So Rachel Lilly was working with the Welsh Government and senior civil servants. So looking at that level of, well, both micro, meso, and macro, because the people engaged with the mindfulness-based programs here were responsible for policy development. And so she combined both mindfulness and behavioral insight work, and yeah, what the results. This paper kind of summarizes work over a decade and points to how the program impacted both an inner level of people feeling more able to notice what was influencing their decision making, being able to open up to broader perspectives, and also it impacted on working practices within the workplace. So noticing kind of systemically what supported focus, for example, and attention, and what impacted negatively on it, what supported empowering meetings where everybody felt like they had the opportunity to contribute, and what got in the way of that. So it's a nice paper looking at both inner process and how that impacts on working practices, and showed that that intervention did lead to kind of more empowering and value-aligned leadership. So as I say, there's more to come on the research front, but the good news is that it looks as if mindfulness can be helpful both in developing inner capacities and actually impacting in systems as well. And I'm going to hand to Sophie now to pick up on some of the challenges around systems as well.
Thanks, Bridgette. I might actually take this opportunity of a transition to just invite us to pause, and if you want to stand briefly or stretch or move your body. I know when we're looking at PowerPoint for any significant amount of time, it can impact on us. So I'll try not to speak for too long. There's just 2 more slides to briefly give some underpinning and a bit of an overview of some of the work that we've been doing specifically around program development at the centre. But I want to make sure we leave enough time to do a bit of a longer practice and then have some discussion. So I won't speak for too much longer. But if you want to stand up, or if you need to sort of walk backwards and forwards, or look away from the screen in order to engage with what's being said, and do what you need to do. You will all be sent the PowerPoint presentation afterwards. Okay. You can pop that slide up, Bridgette, when you're ready. Thank you. Yeah, so I wanted to speak a little bit about the reality of these systems that we live and work within. And the reality is that they can create significant challenges for us. So being part of dysfunctional family systems impacted by intergenerational trauma, being part of unhealthy cultures in the workplace or in school environments and in other organizations of which we're members can significantly impact us. Identifying with particular communities that suffer from prejudice or stereotyping. And also we're all really part of sort of on a larger scale, the bigger systems, the ecology and the climate systems that we're all living within. And I think a lot of the time we can go about our lives and forget the fact that we are in dynamic interrelation with all of these systems. And as Bridgette was saying, I think in our field, in the mindfulness field, we're very much focused on sort of individual health and well-being, and really inviting people to sort of own and take ownership for their own ability to be resilient in the face of difficulty, without necessarily recognizing the reality of the impact of the systems that we're living and working within. And the fact that we are part of these systems that can sometimes feel completely sort of beyond our ability to affect change or impact in any way can leave us feeling quite hopeless. even experiencing despair. Is a really common. We were speaking about this recently. I have 3 younger sons, but I have 2 sons particularly that suffer from anxiety at such a young age, and it just seems to be in the ether, these physical experiences of anxiety that we seem to be sort of, I would say, are definitely connected to the systems that we're living and working within. Avoidant behaviors and addiction, for example, empathetic distress, burnout and at work, all of these things that we're really familiar with. So it can feel quite hopeless. But the really wonderful thing is, mindfulness particularly, it has an incredible amount of power within this area. So it can be incredibly powerful, both in helping us to become more aware of the impact of the external conditions that we're in. And we can also then be more skillful in the way that we're responding, both to our own inner world and our own inner experience, but also relationally to the people that we live and work around us. And that can really help us. One of the sort of linchpins, I guess, in this work that we've been talking about here, mindfulness in relation to systems, is really about how mindfulness can support us to shift our perspective from being sort of a separate individual focus into more of a systems view. So shifting our perspective to seeing ourselves more as process and as inherent interconnected part of systems. And that shift in perspective can really help us to see how the actions that we take and the choices that we make, even the tiny things that we do on a day-to-day basis, within a systems view, have this huge potential to actually to ripple out through systems and instigate significant change. So it can shift us from this feeling of sort of powerlessness into really a sense of having some power, even in the small decisions and choices we make, to instigate change in the systems that we live and work within. Yeah. So we've been looking at developing programs around this area, and obviously drawing on the body of work that's been done around mindfulness and compassion practices, and looking about what we know about the pedagogy of how best to cultivate mindfulness and compassion, but within this realm of sort of social or systemic functioning. And a lot of our early work we've been looking at this for a few years now. A lot of the early work that was done on this a few years ago with colleague Rosalie Derez and Chris Johnson. Chris, alongside Joanna Macy, wrote a book called Active Hope that I know many of you are familiar with. I actually saw some Active Hope teachers coming up in the chat, which is lovely to see. And Chris and Joanna created this book, Active Hope, which really is shifting our sort of sense of the word hope from it being like a passive feeling that we have to actually something to do with the action that we take. And Chris and Joanna's work was based on Joanna's early work. So Joanna Macy is a scholar in deep ecology, in systems thinking, and she really brought together Buddhism, activism, resilience into this sort of body of work that was called The Work That Reconnects. And The Work That Reconnects, I'll briefly speak to. I don't want to take up too much of our time for practice. But it really is grounded in this initial recognition of what's good, what's going well in the systems that we live and work within, what can we appreciate, and what can we be grateful for. And that gratitude, that cultivation of gratitude, can then resource us to enable us to actually turn toward the reality of the pain that is caused through the system that we're living in. And by turning toward that and becoming aware of it, that can allow us to actually honor that. We can honor the pain of the fact that I'm part of this community with this inherent identity that I was born with, and that causes me pain. That contributes to my emotional field. And then we can allow that pain to sort of move through us. And this can enable us then to move to the next stage that Joanna talks about, as she calls it, seeing with new eyes. But really, this is what I was speaking about before, that shift in perspective from me as an individual fixed self to actually having an experience of myself as process, or an experience as myself as an inherently interconnected part of the system. And then that can then support us to actually implement that into our behavior and our actions and the choices that we make, because it can increase our sense of power to affect change. And in the program that we've developed, we also draw on the theory of planned behavior, which looks at how to move people from values and intentions and align behavior to those values and intentions. Often we have these intentions, these values, these beliefs, but we don't always act. So smoking is a perfect example. We know smoking is bad for us, but we often still smoke. This is there's exercises within the program that look at how we can actually shift people to taking action that's aligned to this new perspective. Yeah. So, as I've said, really drawing on this sort of body of work around active hope, the work that reconnects, and also over the last 25 years, really the development of the field and the pedagogy in the way that we know is helpful in supporting people to cultivate mindfulness and compassion, and bringing that into a program that's been designed to support people to become more self-aware, to better able to regulate themselves and their emotions on an individual level, on a relational level, and also to shift in perspective to a more sort of systems view and align their values and intentions with actual actions and behavior based on mindfulness and compassion-based practices, and also systems thinking set within the framework of the work that reconnects. Okay, enough speaking. Yeah. So if you're willing and if you want to, I'll invite us into a practice, but do only do that if that's right for you at this time. And we can sit together for about maybe just like 7 or 8 minutes. So if you want to stand for that time, that's also fine. Have I got time to do that? We have, haven't we? Yeah. Yeah, good. You might want to stretch the body or move the body if that's what's calling. Want to have a sip of a drink if you need one. Do whatever you need to sort of settle your body into a posture that supports you to feel grounded. So it's really helpful to have some connection with the floor or with a cushion, if you're sitting on a cushion or a chair. Sensing into the points of contact between the body and the floor, or the body and the chair. So we can have some sense that the weight of the body is falling down, resting into what is supporting you, and really exploring the points of contact and seeing you can identify where the body ends and where the chair or the floor begins. And this chair, this floor, supported by the building in which you're sat and the foundations of the building, resting onto this earth. And so as much as feels okay for you right now, we can just have a sense of letting go into the earth, letting go of the weight of the body into what is supporting us. Allowing your experience to be exactly as it is. So there's nothing to do, nothing to change. We can just let ourselves be here, however we find ourselves. And also notice the height of the body rising up. And as we sit here, grounded in some sense of awareness of the body, of the breath even maybe, we can just notice how things are. Maybe physical sensations rising and falling in our awareness, or perhaps states of mind, thoughts, feelings, sounds from inside or outside the room, all just coming and going. So we might take a minute just to check in what's here for us, what's here in this body, what's here in the mind, what's here in the heart. And giving ourselves full permission to be here however we find ourselves today. And as we open to the sensations in the body, movement, stillness, tingling, tightness, coolness perhaps, or numbness, we can just notice how the sensations arise, shift, and pass. And we can recognize that this body is a living system. Millions of cells working in coordination, organs, structure of the body, blood, neurons, all continuously interacting. And we might also notice that the breath, if that feels okay for us, we can notice that the breath is flowing in and out. And just bringing some gentle curiosity to exploring this breath. Can we identify where the breath enters the body and where it leaves? Where does the breath become an in-breath, transition into an out-breath? So this breath bringing oxygen into the body, nourishing all of the cells in the system, enabling our system to function, coming in and flowing out. This breath that also flows through the trees and the plants, also through all other humans. This shared air that we breathe, gently flowing in and out of our system. Can we identify at what point it is in and at what point it is out of the body? And when you feel ready, coming back more clearly in contact with a sense of the weight of the body in the chair, or the cushion, or the feet on the floor if you're standing. The points of contact between the body and what's supporting you. Also a sense of the height of the body and the space around the body. Touch of clothing or air on the skin. Space above you, in front of you, behind you, to the left, to the right. And then in your own time, you can blink the eyes open and just introduce a sense of sight into the practice. And you might want to just look around the room that you're sat in. And perhaps look at the other people here on the screen. These people that have come together with such good intentions to explore this wonderful work that we do. Thank you. So lovely to see so many Bangor students here. Yeah, and everyone else. Okay, so I think we've got a question for discussion. Do we want to put the slide up, Bridgette, or maybe we can just open out? I think it was what resonates, wasn't it? It's a pretty simple question. Yeah, that's it. So what feels most resonant or challenging from what you've heard us speak about today for you in your own context, or really anything else? If you've got any other questions or comments on what we've shared, we'd love to hear them. I think there's one in the chat, Steph.
Thank you.
Oh no, maybe not. Oh yeah.
No, Debbie's just talking about and flagging that there's some concepts that do resonate greatly with a recently developed 5-week training course. So I've dropped that into the chat if anybody's interested. Thank you for that, Debbie.
Thank you for sharing that, Debbie. I'll have a look at that.
That's great.
So do feel free just to come off mute or pop a hand up or an electronic hand if there's anything that you'd like to say or share. Teresa, were you coming off mute there? No. It's like when you accidentally sneeze at an auction, isn't it?
Thank you. Yeah, Jenny. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this resonates a lot. I struggle sometimes in the environmental movement with people who don't have any kind of practice and who get very angry and very burned out and very hostile. So yeah, somehow bringing them together. So I'm just curious to know a little more about what the content of the course is. It another 8-week course? Do we have to do more training? How does it kind of work? What's your vision for this Inner Change Works course?
Thank you.
Speak to that? Yeah. So we're delivering it. So as you know, Jenny, because you were involved in one of the earlier pilots of this one. So it's iteratively evolving over time with our learning and continuing to develop. And the next delivery that we've got planned is November, and it's 6 weeks and it's online and it's I'm going to say 2.5-hour sessions, something like that. And we can share all the details. And then there's sort of daily home practice in between that and community stuff as well. But yeah, the intention is for it, I guess, in terms of the structure of the offering, for it to be quite flexible, and there would also be potential for us to deliver it over sort of a 2-day workshop, particularly within specific organisations that wanted that to be targeted within their organisation, for example. So yeah, the structure, I guess, it's still within the framework of the work that reconnects, and it's just drawing on various other I don't know, Bridgette, maybe you want to speak about some of your influences that you were going to mention before that. that may come into the program?
Yeah, so as Sophie was saying, really tailored to who comes along and what the concerns are. So yeah, whether those are particular social justice themes, particular areas that people might be working in, and this combination of how we can develop these inner capacities, but also how can we bring awareness into the contexts within which we are working, or people who are involved in activism. So, for example, we can work on the level of things that we appreciate and are grateful for on an individual level, but then also we can bring a process of appreciative inquiry into the context within which we work. What's already, where is compassion already present? What already supports steadiness and pausing? So yeah, both developing inner capacities and considering the systems. Yeah, and tailored really to what the particular themes are that people are wanting to address.
Thank you, Bridgette. That's great. Is that okay, Jenny? Did that give you? Yeah, okay. Another question's come up in the chat. So what do we know about people in war-torn areas of the world and cultivating caring, connection and hope? What work is the mindfulness community doing, or what has been done?
I can just speak a little bit about some of the work that I know that's happening in that area, but yeah, do come in, Bridgette. I mean, I know that there's been quite a significant amount of work done with people that have been displaced, forcibly displaced due to environmental climate concern or challenges, but really also recognizing that when people are in extreme conditions is not necessarily the right thing or the best thing for that's needed. That's not always what's needed to help. And a more effective strategy I think, is resourcing the people that are working with those populations. So I know we've been speaking to the UN, and I know lots of work has been going on within the UN to develop a mindfulness program to support UN staff who very much suffer from trauma from their experiences of field work, but also in terms of diplomatic communication to support effective communications to happen. So there is work, as far as I know, happening, but my understanding is that the majority of that work supports the people that are in the caring profession, that are supporting the people that are experiencing the more intense levels of trauma. Bridgette, you might have something else to add.
I mean, only to mention again that there is work. If we think about those levels, so Amit Bernstein's work, working with refugees, is one example of supporting people at an individual level, really to find moments of refuge and to work with that experience that they have had of being displaced and being within war zones. And as Sophie was saying, then the work that supports people who are supporting people who are in that position. So the possibilities of working at every level seems that's what the systems view also points to. I see, Simon, your comment that encouraged by the idea that any little change within a system, our own practice of mindfulness and the capacities that develops, that will impact into the systems we're part of. And the importance also of engaging with those who are policymakers and working to bring change to that level as well. So all these systems being important, and I guess an awareness of what our work is. That's another part, isn't it, Sophie, of what the inner change work considers. It helps develop clarity over, okay, where is my kind of area of influence? What can I personally do to take this forward?
Yeah, by recognizing that we don't all have to do everything, and we can't, but also like that. And I think, and I really appreciate, obviously, there are people in positions of power that it significantly impact these systems and this sort of actually experiencing the shift in perspective can shift our perception of where the power lies within a system, and it really can enable us to see the power that we have. Yeah.
Thank you very much, both of you. I think we might have time just for one more. Oh, there's two, but let's just see. So Simon's talking about being encouraged by the idea that the more we practice mindfulness, the greater the positive energy flowing through communities.
Just answer that one, Steph.
I beg your pardon, sorry. I beg your pardon, yeah, you did. Are there any studies for mindfulness-based support in palliative care settings? And what impact does it have on the individual that you might know of?
I can say a little bit, not that I'm a specialist in this area, but the work of Patricia Luck is something to mention here. Who's worked in palliative care, and I've heard her speak about, again, that systems approach of working with families and kind of value clarification, what's important at this point. So not an area that I'm particularly specialist in, but I do know, and others may, if you do and want to pop something into the chat, feel welcome. I do know that mindfulness definitely has been offered in palliative care.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Well, there's if there are any other comments or people want to make any other observations, please feel free to reach out to us directly, and we'll get some responses collected and sent back to you. In the meantime, as always, you'll get a copy of this particular presentation today, and the recording will be available for you to review, look at again if you'd like to. It really just leaves us to say, look, to Bridgette and Sophie, what an absolutely brilliant, marvellous experience today. Thank you so much for sharing the content and for really bringing to life the work that's happening in Bangor, more than just the programme, but more about the context of it and the why that sits behind it, which is really important. And thanks to everybody that's been here today. It's so wonderful again to see such a brilliantly growing audience. I'll just remind you all that we have a session coming up on the 17th of July. We're really proud to have Rahina Harilal speak for us. Rahina's got a leadership corporate background, but also a psychology background, and particularly is going to be speaking about trauma-informed mindfulness, safer, inclusive practices for marginalised communities, and that's on the 17th of July at 12:30. So yeah, thanks again for being here.
Can I just briefly say, because I can see more things coming into the chat, Jim, we didn't respond to yours. So if we share our email addresses, I'm happy to share mine, and Steph will send that out with the pack. So if you want to get in contact, or you're engaged in this work, or interested in becoming engaged in this work, please do get in touch, because that's the system that's going to actually make a difference. So please do, very much appreciate if you're willing to contact us.
That's really generous, Sophie. Thanks for that. We'll do that. I'll speak to you after about what we do. That's fantastic. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. And we really look forward to seeing you again at some time in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks all.